I think so too.
So, for this up close and personal, we're with a gentleman that I actually was a huge fan of when we grew up, or when I grew up. Stewart Copeland from the police. Thank you for having us in your house. We're not going to tell anyone where it is, but we know it's in California.
I'm not even sure where it is myself. It's that mysterious.
The
reason I don't know where it is because it's an ivory tower. And the ladder, sometimes I don't maintain the ladder, and I don't actually
see.
I look down and I think, where exactly is
there's
this
no
place?
signal up here,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's perfect, isn't it? I'm going to take you back a long, long time to the beginning. Okay, this is called Up Close and Personal, and what I'd like to ask you about is, can you remember back in the day before the police became big, the hard times and what it was like, and how mentally you got yourself prepared for hopefully with the success that was going to happen?
Well, the hard times were only hard relative to actual hard times. I was a starving musician in London, but I actually, having played with Curved Air, I had some money in the bank, and I was surviving. I had 3 meals a day, well, actually 4 meals a day, because I was a hungry little bastard. And it was hard slog, going up and down the M6 and loading your stuff in and out of Rebecca's and the Lucarno Ballroom and the De Montfort Hall and Guildford, all that. But it was kind of fun, and it wasn't that hard. Well, it was hard work, but when you're young, it doesn't feel hard. I wouldn't be doing that now. Now that would be hard work.
Well, that's my next question. So, would you go back to any of that?
I do go back to the roadieing. I do it right here.
Okay.
I do it not at the Mecca Ballroom. I do it right here. I wire stuff. And I put on weird radio stations, and I see all these drums, everything here, it's all wired up and mic'd up. And I think, what, that 57, I could do better than that. And I read around the microphones, and I obsess about, so just wiring the studio. And right now, the only wires you can see is this, the guitar lead, ready for that guitar.
Yeah.
And your wires.
Yes.
Desecrating the studio
I do
floor.
apologize.
All the wires run under floor. It's very slick. This is some high-class, triple grade A roadie shit in here.
Well, we've done some videos here ourselves, and we've turned up, and you've clicked all the video cameras on, and it's all linked and ready to go.
Well, okay, I'm a cheapskate, so I hire the very cheapest engineer in the world.
That's you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And we're going to drop a few. You get what you pay for.
Is there a gig, a very memorable gig, that A, is your favourite gig you've ever played, and B, the worst gig you've ever played?
Well, even the worst gig, in its own way, was a treasured memory.
Okay.
Where I walked out in Italy and said, this was the first gig of a little mini tour with some Italian chums of mine. And it was a classic. Ciao, Portoferino! Don't you? Where that did not happen. It happened in Portofino. And because it was a new band, first show, just like, we'd had so much fun rehearsing and everything, getting in front of it. It was a disaster. We laughed and laughed and laughed at the end of the day. But it was the disaster gig. Best show? And there's many of those, and you have to laugh because nobody died. And it was a drag not to completely light the room up, and you just say, well, we're going to play tomorrow. Tomorrow night we're going to kick ass, And of course, one usually kicks one's own ass.
Right.
Usually we kicked our ass. We blew our minds. And the best gigs, there are many. But, the first one was kind of cool when I was 12 at the American Embassy Beach Club in Beirut, Lebanon.
Okay.
That was kind of a blur.
I guess your dad set that one up for you.
No, he did not. My brother Ian set that up for me. He was my agent when he was 14 and I was 12.
Right.
And he was my agent also when he was 57 and I was 55.
Yeah.
Until his unfortunate demise.
Yeah.
So that's a long client-agent relationship right there. He got me my first gig in the Black Knights in Beirut. Then there was Wells Cathedral, the Christmas service. My school, by then I was in boarding school in Somerset, and they do the Christmas service in Wells Cathedral. 1,000 voices of students, parents, and teachers singing the Christmas carols, and I was in the band. And I only have one song to play, rum da 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 dum dum dun 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 dun. You know, I can't even remember the name of whatever that song is. The Rumty Tumpty song, I think it's called.
Right.
But I was fidgety and noisy, as drummers are. So he banished me off to one, like, stay over there for the whole service. The drum, away, And so there I was by myself in Wells Cathedral, in one of the arms of the cross, floodlit from outside, by myself in this thing like that, with 1,000 voices raised in song. And those Christmas carols are darned pretty, particularly when you got the choir going and everything like that. That was a musical experience that left a mark.
Wow, okay. Well, we both, as we've discussed many times before, we both shared the same drum teacher,
Yes.
Mr. Abrahams.
Grumpy Abrams.
Mr. Grumpy Abrahams, as we all know, and this interview is not long enough to go through all the stories. Yeah. But what's your
he
memories?
He could hear you screwing up a Glenn Miller lick
I know where this
from
is going.
down in the kitchen.
Yes. Well, he didn't have a kitchen when I went there. Luckily, there was no downstairs.
And you try and make up a drum. Hey! You come running up the stairs and no. You had to play what was on the chart.
I got a slap on the arm.
Yeah.
You never got slapped?
I never got a slap.
Maybe.
But my father was incensed because
Right.
he was an old jazzer. And we were playing Glenn Miller charts. Was just wrong. It's like playing Yellow Jackets or something, and which I'm sure is really great. But from he had this point of view. He was a jazz snob like every jazz person.
What's your memories with Max?
Grumpy, that he would come with his cup of tea, and I remember the experience more than I remember him of going home in the tube from Sloane Square, and going back fried. And this you might find interesting. Recently, they put me into an MRI to examine my brain. Long story why they were doing that, but it was a research mission, and they discovered that in my brain, the bit which controls connects the two halves, the something maximus something or other, is really constricted in my case. And they were all excited to figure out whether at the age of 19, when I was learning to separate the two halves of my body, that affected that, or the reason I'm real good at drums is because I was born that way.
Wow.
How do you like that?
No, I'd be interested.
Because the separate, being able to do two things with two different hands.
Yeah.
That sort of, in a way, that inhibition is an advantage. They also told me, and I have to remember the name of the word now. Oh man, I can't remember. But also in the brain, there are the two things there that are really huge, and those are the fear, flight, or fury.
Okay.
What the hell are they called? I would be bragging about this if I could only remember their Latin name.
Wow. Okay, what motivates you?
It makes up for the thin connection cord there.
Okay.
What the hell are they? Major part of the brain. It's right under the thing.
Well, there's a competition prize.
Yeah.
If you can come back with the answer to that one. What motivates you, Stewart? You've achieved a lot in your life.
What motivates me is the joy of what I do.
Yeah.
And it used to be to conquer the world, and I feel that the world is mine to the extent that I want any of it to be mine. But still, every day I come in here, and I'm usually at my desk. After, if I'm on the school run, I get back by like 8. I'm here normally by 7:30, and I cannot wait to fire up and work on whatever music mission I'm on, whether it's I'm doing a lot of orchestral work these days, or cutting up one of my rock and roll jams, or whatever it is. And it really, the drive, the impetus comes from, it's more like a magnet. And I would rather be doing that than pretty much anything else.
Okay. Yeah, because one of the projects that you worked on a few years back now, the Ben Hur, I think that took you nearly a year to put that all together. Is that correct?
Well, there were different stages of it. There was the arena show, which took about a year.
Okay.
But then there was the concert show, which is where I go and show up in your town with a big orchestra, and the 1924 silent black and white film, this huge old masterpiece film, plus a big ass orchestra, and your humble servant banging away on the drums. Preparing that show took me actually 2 years.
Okay.
Creating the score as well as curating the film.
So you come in here and you're working on that on your own.
Yep.
Okay.
And obviously that doesn't always go.
In fact, my engineer Jeff Seitz, we've been
Okay.
working together for 30
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
We're just friends now. We hang out and drink beer and talk about shit. We don't actually, he's off doing stuff, and I actually, consider it a studio invasion. When I've got a tech guy, he's like a computer guy, and when he comes in and I have to stare at the wall, it's like hell on earth.
But how do you get through those? I mean, because when you're with a band and you're in rehearsal with the band, you've got the team to all help you out and pull you. When you're on your own, how do you, those dark times when things aren't going, how do you put yourself through that, or do you find you just don't have that?
I think that dark times are more easily navigated on your own than they are in a band context, because wonderful as bands are, there's an emotional bond, which means there's an emotional equation, which means there's a lot of emotion in bands. That's kind of what holds the band together, and you have a mutual codependence of a certain kind, and band will fuck you up a lot worse than working on your own.
Right.
And bands can sustain you, yes, and they're really good fun to play in bands, but it's a much more complicated environment.
Right. So in that way, I suppose they're the darker times than actually coming in here on your own.
Yeah, the only dark times in here, I don't have dark times in here. I used to when I was composing for a living, when I used to work for the man, hired gun, flinty-eyed film composer. You got a movie, you want me to score it, you want a happy movie, you want happy sad, or do you want sad happy?
Right.
I can sort that out,
Right.
And that's what I did for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the vagaries, of Hollywood mean that either some music that you worked really hard on ain't working, you got to start again, or just it's the film composing is actually a lot of fun. The business of it, the industry,
Right.
the Hollywood film industry is lethal. If you ever watch Entourage, the TV show, it's exactly like that without the humor.
Okay.
It is no good deed goes unpunished. The fools are promoted. Oh God, and there's no logic to it, no rhyme or reason. Who cares about justice? Just if there was some logic to it, that would be great. So I'm real glad to be out of that. But the actual making of the music for film and working with the directors, that was always very rewarding.
Okay. Final question. You've got the young Stewart Copeland in front of you, just about to venture into this into this world. What advice?
Actually, I have my new grandson, Arthur.
Wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. He's now 3 days old.
Okay. Well, he's not. He's slightly too young to give advice to because he's not listening to you yet.
Well, I am giving the advice though.
He's the only one that's listening
That's
to you.
right.
Yeah.
All my sons and daughters, not so much anymore.
What advice would you give to the young Stewart Copeland?
The young Stewart Copeland, playing drums, would be to learn all the instruments of the rock band.
Okay.
And to be not just a drummer, but to be a musician. And getting on the mic is my usual saw. Everyone's heard me say that because everyone works for the singer. And in a band, the singer is the guy who can't play anything. And everybody's having fun. They're playing stuff, and there's one guy who can't actually play anything. And there's a mic. Okay, we'll all sing.
Yeah.
And years later, everybody's working for him. And because the voice is the central element in pop music, and so the main advice for that young Stewart, no matter how much he likes playing drums, and this is my father's advice to me, by the way, you're not a drummer, you're a musician.
Yep, totally. You know what? That was brilliant. Thank you very much, as always, for your time. And good luck with your new venture.
Thank you.
And that's it. So thank you very much from sunny California in Stewart Copeland's studio. Thank you. Bye-bye.